Alright guys, so today I'm going to explain how I became Muslim and why I think it's the truth. So, I never really expected myself to become Muslim, right? Because I just thought that Muslim and Islam was just a religion they did in the Middle East, right? A lifestyle, they did in their corner, right? That I necessarily didn't have to involve myself. I mean, I wanted to learn about Islam, but I didn't think that I would actually become one because I could have just viewed Islam from the outside perspective, and I could have been like, okay, I like what they're doing, I like their religion, but why do I need to submit to Islam, right? That was my first, that's what I first thought when I was encountering Islam, right? When I was meeting Muslim people. I have a lot of Muslim friends, even before I was Muslim. And, they're very open minded. They didn't really force me to convert. But I just wanted to learn more about them. I was intrigued by the Middle East, and I wanted to learn more about it, right? Just to open my perspectives. Because in life, my entire goal in life was to seek truth, right? And to basically broaden my perspectives, right? And I decided to look into Islam as a way to broaden my perspectives, right? And broaden and develop my perspicacity, my ability to view different perspectives. And I just realized that Islam is the truth, right? Like you guys, like I know it sounds crazy, right? But what is Islam? Islam is submission under a singular point. It's submission. Islam is about submission under the source of everything in the universe. Keep in mind that it's submission under one God. It's submission under a higher power. That's what it is, guys. That's all it is. And this singular higher power is, gathers everything in the universe together to make all exist, right? That's the entire concept of Islam. It's basically submission under one God. That's all it is. And what I realized was that if you seek truth long enough as a human, you will eventually arrive at Islam. You will arrive at the final destination of truth. What do you guys think is the final destination of truth? It's one point. One God. One God, the creator, is literally the final destination of truth. You can do all the science. You can try to delve into all the science, that there is in the universe. But after all that, you will arrive at God, right? And that's what I realized. And the thing with me is so why did I decide to submit versus just appreciate? Because I could have just appreciated Islam, I could have been like, yeah, I appreciate these people. They're very humble people. I like these people. But why do I need to pray? Why do I need to do these things? Why am I, obligated to submit to a religion? Like, why is that something I want to do? Well, like I said, it's because I realized that it was the truth. So what this means is being religious and seeking truth are the same thing. I never expected myself to be religious. I never expected myself to be in a religion, right? But I just realized that the religion of Islam was the only true religion. It was the only religion that made the most sense, right? And that's when I realized that it was the truth. Once it's the truth, once you basically see the Quran, you can't unsee Islam. See, that's the problem with Islam, right? Is when you see Islam and you recognize that it's the truth, you can't unsee it. You can't just pretend like you didn't see it, all right? Because it's still there, And I think Allah has kind of revealed Islam in front of me. He's revealed and forced me to realize that Islam was the truth. So when I saw that it was the truth, then I was like, oh crap, okay. And after that, I just wanted to have a relationship with God, because that's one thing I didn't really have. I didn't really have a religion before, I wouldn't say I was atheist because it's not like I didn't believe in anything. Because, I think believing in nothing is I don't know. There was something that held me back from saying that I believe in literally nothing, right? And I think that's my fitrah, that's my natural fitrah, right? Telling me that there was actually a singular higher power. Even if it's not God, there was at least a higher power. That was my conclusion. But that's all Islam is. Islam is basically just submission under a higher power. So how did I go from recognizing that there was a higher power to submission under one God? Well, I just had to make the two click, right? Once I realized that Allah gave me signs in my life that He does exist and that God is the real thing, that's when I decided, okay, if I want to have a relationship with Him, I need to submit. That was the biggest reason. That was the biggest reason why. Because I wanted to have a relationship with Him, but the only way to do that is to submit, right? You see a lot of people that believe in God, right? Yeah, I believe in God. That's not enough, guys. Like, believing in God is not enough. Like, it's literally, because you know who believes in God but doesn't submit? The shaitan. The devil believes in God. I mean, he sees God, but he doesn't submit. He rebels against God. He rebels. It's actually worse to be a believer and not submit, because you believe in God, you see God, but you choose to rebel against him. You choose to rebel. That believing in God is worse than being an atheist, right? That's the thing. Because when you're an atheist, at least you know nothing, right? You're completely ignorant to everything, right? Like I was, right? But when you actually see the truth, when you actually see God, and you're like, oh crap, I believe in God, but I don't choose to submit to him. I don't choose to, sacrifice my own desires for God, right? When you do that, then you get one step closer to shaitan. You get one step closer to the freaking devil, dude. Like, literally, So believing in God is not enough. You have to submit, right? And for me, like, I was either going to be an atheist, or I was going to be super religious. I was going to submit to God, and that's what I did. I became a servant of God, right? That's what I am. I'm literally a servant of God, right? But you have to keep in mind that I was seeking truth the entire time, and I stumbled upon Islam. So it's a real it was magnificent that Allah has kind of guided me, because when I was meeting these Muslim people, Allah has guided me to these people. You guys realize, like, Allah was guiding me towards Muslim people so that I can learn about Islam, so that I can convert. Like, it was all written by Allah. Like, Allah has already written that in me. Like, becoming Muslim was never going to miss me. It was always going to hit me. It was always going to, like, Allah, before I was born, Allah has written in my life that I was going to become Muslim later down the line. He has written that in me, and it happened, right? And I think Allah just had to make me realize that, like, Islam was the truth, and that I wanted to practice truth. So, like, you have to keep in mind that being religious and practicing the truth is the same thing. Because by the end of the final destination of truth, you arrive at one God, right? And once you recognize and believe that there's one God, and you see that, then it's up to you to decide whether to submit or to not submit, right? So this is where it gets really tricky, guys. It's like, you don't want to believe in God and not submit, because that's dangerous, right? Because then you rebel against God, consciously knowing that he exists, which is worse than not being completely ignorant in the first place, right? It's better to submit to God once you know that he exists, right? Because, like I said, the devil is the one who believes in God but doesn't submit. So that's what you guys said. So that's why, I decided to submit, and it's also because I realized that you will have a more righteous life when it comes to living life as a Muslim. Muslims do a lot of things right. They wake up early, they don't drink, they don't party, they don't mess around with a bunch of girls, they don't date, they only marry. Like, I think marriage is actually one of the main things that, like, draw me to. It was one of the main things that hesitated from me becoming a Muslim, right? Because I was like, marriage? I can only have sex inside marriage? That makes no sense. I was like, because in conventional times, like right now, people get married like way later. So it's like, how am I going to wait until I'm like 35 or 30 to get married and have sex? Like, that did not make sense to me. For me, I was like, wouldn't you want to have like a couple partners, right? To kind of like sort out before you find your true partner to marry? Like, for me, it didn't make sense. Like, for me, I thought like you had to date first in order to find like the perfect woman. But it's actually the opposite. You actually marry the person that you like, and then you date after, right? And there's a lot of reasons for this. The main reason is to protect the hearts of both parties, right? So a lot of men, they go through heartbreak, right? They go through heartbreak. And the main reason for heartbreak is relationships, dating, right? That's the root of all evil. Like, shaitan is in charge when it comes to dating. Like, dating around, like, that's completely like forbidden. And it destroys the heart, because not only are you ruining all these women, right? Because one of the most important things for women is to protect their virginity. So, like, if you just take that away from her and you weren't even going to marry her, like, you literally took her virginity. You literally raised her body count by 1, and you didn't even marry her. Like, it makes it, you know what I mean? Like, it's completely like, it's so stupid. But like, if you realize that, if you get married first though, if you get married to the person that you like, right? And you start the dating process after, then, the relationship is a lot more stable because it's inside marriage. You know what I mean? and you guys are working it out together. You know what I mean? Versus like when it comes to casual dating, it's like, you know, it's not as serious, and plus like you guys are not living together, and that's the main problem, guys. Like you don't truly understand, or you won't truly know a person unless you live with them, right? Yes, you can like date this person around, but if you don't understand, like if you don't live with this person, you're never going to understand who they really are, right? So it's better to just do that right off the bat, like, you know, once you guys get married, right? You know, and it's better to do this process earlier before, you know, because like imagine you've been dating for 5 years, and at the end of it all, out of all the time you wasted, now it's all waste because you broke up at the end. It's like, it would have been better, guys, I know it sounds weird, but it's better to marry and divorce after 5 years versus being in like a relationship for 5 years and then breaking up. Because at least when you got married, like in the beginning, even if it ended in divorce in 5 years, at least you guys tried to make it work. At least you guys had the intention of having a future together. See, that's what's important. You guys have to have the intention of having a future together, right? And when you guys stray away from the marriage and do dating, you don't have this intention there, because you're just kind of just playing around. You're Mickey Mousing around. You're just like, you're too immature. You don't realize these things. So that's one truth in Islam that I realized, okay, this is the truth, right? There's a reason why God has forbidden us to, you know, commit adultery, which is basically sex outside of marriage. So you can only have sex inside marriage. And it makes sense, right? But you have to keep in mind that like people got married early back then, you know, people got married like, you know, when they were like 15. So like, if you got married to your first woman in like, you know, like 15 years old, and you started living with her like from the very beginning, like, you know, like it makes a lot more sense now. But now, if you're to try to wait till you're 35, like that's crazy. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is like, you know, you don't necessarily have to wait, you know, to have kids to get married. Like you can get married but not have kids. You know what I mean? Like you can get married and then like, you know, maybe like date each other for like, you know, within marriage for like maybe a couple years before you guys have your first baby. This could be an example, right? Like, so just because you guys are getting married doesn't necessarily mean like you have to have kids, you know? These things are not correlated. It's like, so yeah, so that's one thing, like, you know, I've been thinking about with Islam, is especially the topic of like marriage, you know, and why he doesn't allow certain things. Because I feel like a lot of people might be hesitant to accept Islam just because of the dating aspect, right? Because it's like, it doesn't, you know, for me, it didn't make sense. That's the one thing that actually prevented me from actually submitting to God, right? And going into Islam, because I thought it was preposterous. I was like, what do you mean I have to freaking like marry someone first? Like, it didn't make sense to me, but now it makes complete sense, right? Because remember, Allah, like God is all knowing, and He knows everything. So He knows how everything's gonna plan out, right? So if you guys go date around, yes, it's like joyful for 5 years, but then you get your heart broken, and you know, in order to prevent that, you get married first, because you know, and this is why you see like a lot of Muslim marriages, they last. Like the divorce rates aren't that low, right? And it's for a reason. It's because you got married to your first ever partner, right? So there was never a heartbreak. Like imagine you go through life without ever having like your heart broken by a woman, right? Or by a man, right? Imagine, right? That's what Islam is. That's what Allah meant by like protecting the hearts, right? Because when you date, the heart has the potential to be broken, right? Because when you attach to someone, right, and you date around and you do all these things, like, and you separate, it becomes agonizing. Whereas like when you do it halal in marriage, you guys have a commitment together. You guys are committed to get closer to God and get closer to Allah, right? So that's the whole point of marriage. Like the whole point of marriage is to work together to get close to Allah. It's for growth, right? It's not just for love. Like marriage is not just about for love, right? Or whatever, you know, yes, love is a part of it, but it's like, I think the main point of marriage is to grow together and get close to Allah and for peace. Right, peace and growth is the whole purpose of marriage, right? So you know, it's for you guys to work together to get close to the Creator, you know, and you know, and you guys can protect each other's hearts from being broken, from being in and out of these relationships. Because like I feel like guys that have been in a bunch of relationships, like, you know, they're not the same anymore. Like in terms of how they view companionship, right? Because if they've just been running through all these women, right, like these people won't be able to view these people won't be good husbands and good fathers, really, you know, because even if they're like a genuinely good person on the inside, they're still lost some amount of humanity just because they ran through all these women. You know what I mean? Like by slipping around with all these women, it's like you can just tell these guys like they kind of lost some touch of their humanity, and some touch of their, you know, you're not really going to be a good husband, you know what I mean? Because you won't be emotionally in with the girl, you know what I mean? And usually, like, you know, when you enter into your first relationships, right, that's when you basically have like you're emotionally invested like the most, because it's your first time, right, with a relationship. But it's better to do within marriage versus dating. So yeah, guys, but you know, that's one truth about Islam that I arrived at. And you guys have to keep in mind that Islam is about seeking truth, right? It's about practicing truth. That's all Islam is. Islam is practicing truth, right? So I dove deep into like the marriage part, but that's one out of many reasons why Islam is the truth. So this is like one of the truths I discovered about marriage and why God forbids you to have sex outside of marriage, right? There's a reason. So that I just gave you some like nuggets there, right? About why you should do that, you know? And that's just one out of many. And there's a ton of other reasons why you shouldn't, you know, and why you should submit to God, and why Islam is the ultimate truth for humans, you know? Because I realized that all the conclusions in the Quran, right? You know, not drinking alcohol. That's so obvious. Like even a famous samurai, like Miyamoto Musashi, he's a famous samurai. I think he was the closest thing to Muslim, right? As a Japanese samurai. Because if you observe the way he lived life like a Muslim, even though he had no contact with Islam. So this is one example of Islam being in Japan, even though the Quran wasn't there. You know what I mean? Because Islam is everywhere. The truth is everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in the Middle East. It doesn't matter if you're in Japan, like farming, like, you know, in you know, being a samurai. It doesn't matter. Islam exists everywhere. And Miyamoto Musashi also arrived at these similar conclusions on how to live life. Same to the Quran. Even though he never had contact with Islam. And there's a reason for this. It's because the truth is the same. It doesn't matter if you're reading the Quran. It doesn't matter if you're living life as a samurai. If you're someone that seeks truth, you will eventually arrive at these conclusions that God has set. And that is why Islam is the truth. Things like not chasing women. That's one truth in the Quran, out of many, that makes Islam the truth. Not chasing women. The dangers that come with that. Right? That's one truth. Don't chase women. You have a better life if you don't do that. If you don't run through multiple women, like, that's one truth of Islam. And that's what the famous samurai, Miyamoto Musashi, arrived at. Not drinking alcohol. Miyamoto Musashi didn't drink alcohol. He avoided it, right? Now, you know, and he arrived at this because, you know, he probably observed how alcohol made him feel. It made him feel sluggish. He wasn't as sharp in his training the next day. It's like, you can just intuitively just like tell, like, okay, crap, like alcohol is bad for you. Like, you don't have to have God tell you that it's bad for you. It's like, you already know that it's going to make you sluggish. You know what I mean? So that is another truth about Islam, avoiding alcohol. So do you guys understand that, like, Islam is everywhere? It doesn't matter if you're in Japan. It doesn't matter if you're in the Middle East. It doesn't matter if you're, you know, anywhere in the world. Islam is everywhere. And when you live life long enough as a human, you eventually arrive at these conclusions of not drinking alcohol, of not committing adultery, all these things. These are all truths about Islam that you will eventually arrive at living life long enough as a human. But you have to make sure that you're seeking truth, because ultimately it's truth that you arrive at, right? Eventually. And that truth is going to be exactly the same as what's in the Quran. You know what I mean? So yeah, guys. So Islam is just basically, Islam just means like practicing truth. All you do is you submit and you practice truth. You submit to God and practice the truth in front of you. You're not denying truth. You're not running away from reality. You're accepting reality and submitting to it. That is Islam.